What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Purpose Journey podcast. I am very, very blessed and excited to have my friend Victor Peña as my guest today.
My name is Victor.
I'm very excited. Victor is a new friend of mine, but we've been growing pretty close, brother in Christ, and he's the associate pastor at my church. And this is someone that has a lot of knowledge, biblical, historic-wise. Someone that I look up to as a mentor within my own faith, and someone that I know I can call on as a friend whenever I need one. But Victor, without further ado, man, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I've never done a podcast episode. I do a lot of public speaking, as you know, but I've never been on a podcast. So this is my first time being in front of that ring light and having a microphone in my face like this. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure, bro. So to the people that may not know you, give them a little bit, and I'm curious too, because I don't know that much about your background.
Yeah.
Give us a little rundown of, who you are, where you're from, where you grew up, a little bit of your background.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in the RGV, so I've been here my whole life. I went to Dallas for 4 years for school and then came right back. So pretty much my whole life has been here in the Valley. And yeah, I grew up with just my mom. My dad wasn't in the picture for pretty much all of my life. About when I turned 21 or 22, me and him reconnected, and we have a great relationship now, and everything's thriving. But for the most part, it was just me and my mom when I was growing up. So it was pretty boring, as you can imagine. I didn't have brothers or sisters to play with, and my mom, she was a single mom. She never got married, so she worked full time. So it was just me on my own a lot. So summers were tough. She would go to work and leave me at home, and I would just be at home by myself from 7 in the morning when she left to 6 p.m. when she came back, just me. So Hot Pockets, peanut butter and jelly, and microwavable popcorn. Over the summer, that was the essentials of my meal. And then of course, a whole bunch of people down here, I grew up Catholic. Didn't really embrace it, wasn't a big part of my life, but I did go to the Catholic Church for a while and did the whole First Communion and all of that. So, but yeah, pretty much when I was old enough to be I don't want to do that, Mom. I said that, and she was like, "That's all good. You don't have to go to church." So I stopped going to church. So yeah.
How old were you then when you stopped going?
Shoot, I must have been maybe 11 or 12, probably 11 or 12 years old. I had been going for a couple of years just to do the communion stuff, and then after that, I was like, I think I'm done. I felt like I graduated. Okay, I took communion. We're good. I don't have to do any more church stuff. So that's what happened there. But yeah, I'm married. I've been married for 2.5 years. And we have a little boy named Diego. He is 15 months old. So we're happy. We have a good life. We're meeting new people with this new church and are getting connected there, and just in a sweet season of life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more of Dallas Seminary. I always thought that was really interesting because I know that's where Pastor Ruben went. Mm-hmm. And how did that come along? I'm assuming we got to kind of go back. Before we answer that, what brought you to Christianity? What was that like?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, after the Catholic Church, I kind of just walked away from religion, and I don't know if I'd consider myself an atheist, but the whole idea of religion just sounded kind of silly to me. The cliche is the spaghetti monster in the sky that sees everything you do. But that's kind of how I viewed God. He's just this make-believe thing that isn't real. It just seems silly. But God in high school brought a lot of Christians into my life. Some of my really good friends were Christians. I went to a pseudo-Christian high school, so there was a lot of Christians around me. So I went to a lot of their events, and I went to a lot of their Young Life camps. If you're familiar with Young Life, I did 5 or 6 of those, and I wasn't even a Christian. But I did a lot of religious stuff, but none of it really stuck. It was just kind of something I did to hang out with my friends, and yeah, I didn't care for God. So a-religious, didn't really care, all that stuff. And that's kind of how it was. After I graduated high school, I met someone, and their parents were missionaries. So I kind of got to see really up close and personal what it meant to live life as a Christian, not as a churchgoer, but as an actual disciple of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of one of the first times that I had really been put in front of someone who was that committed to their religion. Because usually it was just, oh, I'm a Christian, but I just really am like everyone else. But there was something unique about these people. So that kind of gauged my interest. So I went to church with them for another 3 years. Still, maybe 2. Still was not a Christian, didn't care about the Lord. Me and that girl break up, that relationship ends. I blame myself. I was a terrible person before coming to the Lord. But that ends, and I had been used to going to church with them. So the next Sunday rolls around, and I'm like, well, I'm used to church, might as well just go to church. So I went to church that first Sunday, and I couldn't tell you what happened, but I felt like for the first time the Holy Spirit began to speak to me, and he kind of tugged at my heart. And I wouldn't say that's the day I became a Christian, but that's definitely the gateway into my Christian spirituality, into my faith journey, my purpose journey. And that's kind of where that began. When I left that same service where I kind of committed to like, okay, I'm going to see this through and see what's up, I walk out, and it just so happens that one of the pastors there was one of my old high school teachers.
Wow.
Yeah, so he sees me, I walk out, and my eyes are all runny with like tears, and I'm like having a breakdown. And he sees me, and he's like, hey, is everything okay? And I'm trying to play the man, so I'm like, oh no, yeah, I'm good, man. It's just something in my eye or whatever. But he was smarter than that. So he begins to mentor me, he begins to disciple me, he begins to teach me the Bible. And as it turns out, he loves a guy named Chuck Swindoll. And Chuck Swindoll was, currently he's like the chancellor or something, but he was the president of Dallas Seminary. So when I kind of began to feel the call to ministry, the only place I had ever considered was Dallas Seminary because of my mentor and his love for that school. So I only applied there. I didn't apply to any other seminary, didn't look anywhere else, just said, if God wants me to be in seminary, it's got to be DTS because it's the best. So I applied there, got accepted, moved, went over there and just studied the Bible, theology, the history of the church, the history of spirituality in a Christian context, and did that for about 4 years, graduated, and then jumped right back into a doctoral program. So that's what I'm doing right now, getting a doctoral degree in spiritual formation. So that's a really long answer just to say that's how I ended up at Dallas Seminary and kind of in the church world as well.
That's awesome, man. That's a great story, though. That's something that I feel like would serve a lot of people that are looking for like their next step, and whether it might be going to school or like, hey, I'm struggling with my faith and I don't know where to start. And I think that could attest to a lot of people, you know. So it's a long story, but hey, man. It's
and you know, I'd add to just embrace life as it comes, because like when that breakup happened at the time, it seemed like the end of the world, you know. It was like, oh, this is terrible. But I didn't know what God was doing behind the scenes, and I could have never known then that he was going to use that very thing to lead me down this path where I would find the person I was meant to marry, and we have a beautiful kid now, and I found my calling and my purpose, my career, whatever you want to call it, and like I have life fulfillment now. And it all happened because I went through a really tough season of life, you know? Because I think sometimes people, when the bad stuff happens, oh man, this is derailing me, this is taking me away from where I'm supposed to be. But really, it might be those things that kind of push you to where you're meant to be and what you're meant to do. So if you're watching, just embrace life as it comes. Sometimes God uses the worst that life has to offer to bring out the best for us. So not always, but sometimes.
Shoot, amen to that. So kind of to piggyback off the calling that you found upon your own self, that God showed you and led you in this path. Kind of a reoccurring theme that we do on this podcast, given it is the Purpose Journey podcast. We talk about your journey. What would your definition of purpose be?
Yeah.
You know, I'm curious to hear that.
Yeah, I try to simplify it, and I just say purpose is doing the thing which God created me to do. Purpose is doing the thing which God created me to do. And I'm going to talk from a Christian perspective at this point because I'm a pastor and I don't feel bad about that. So I'll talk specifically from a Christian perspective, but I think there's 2 categories for purpose. I think we have like a global purpose as humanity, as Christians, but we also have a specific purpose. So I think that it's all of our purpose to love people. Whether you're a Christian, whether you're not a Christian, and it's not a specific thing, just we're called to love people. We're called to take care of our planet and not destroy it and not just completely ruin it. We're called to take care of the disenfranchised, people who are without. We're called to take care of the poor, the sick, orphans, widows, people like that. That's all of our calling. As humanity, we kind of work together to move humanity forward, right? We create and we care for. We create and we care for. So we have those general purposes, but then we also have specific purposes. Like, what am I meant to do? For me, it's preaching the word of God. It's serving in a local church and loving God's people through that. For other people, their purpose in life is to be a professional musician. For others, it's to sell insurance maybe. I don't know if that's your purpose or not, but that's where you are now. For others, it might be to start up this hugely successful business that employs tens of thousands of people. We all have our different individual purposes. And the good thing is that if you haven't found that yet, you can still do the other one, the general one. You can still love people. You can still be a part of creating something good for humanity. You can still take care of the earth. You can recycle. You can, drive an electric vehicle, all sorts of stuff. You can do a lot of things to care for creation, to do your general purpose if you haven't found this. So, another long answer.
That's awesome, man. No, I think that's really, really powerful, and that's going to resonate. Definitely, I could, attest to that because, shoot, for the longest time, I was battling between happiness and like doing things that I thought would make me happy in my chase for purpose. When I feel like that wasn't the case. It wasn't until I started trying to serve other people, and faith obviously was a huge catalyst in that journey. But once I understood, okay, God's giving me these abilities to talk to people, to help serve in this situation I'm in right now, or to help protect a family with the business I can do, that's when I felt full fulfillment and full purpose in my journey.
Yeah, and that's one of the beautiful things about it is in your pursuit to serve others, you yourself are filled. And the Bible actually has a verse for that. It's better to give than to receive. And that's kind of like backwards in American capitalistic thinking where we want to hoard and we want to build our wealth. And then the Bible is like opposed to that and says, the real measure of success is to give freely. And I feel like you've experienced that because you do a tremendous service. For anyone watching, we have an insurance policy that we got through Leo. So if my wife ever dies, we're going to get a significant check, and that's going to alleviate so much stress. Even just finding a way to take care of the baby. Because I'm going to need help. She does so much right now. If she were to just die, I wouldn't know what to do. So you provide a service. And that's a good mentality to have, that you're here and you're going to make money and you're going to be successful, and I'm happy for you, but you're going to take care of a lot of people on the way.
Yes.
And that's the measure of a business. How many people have you served? Bill Gates has $1 bajillion. Well, he served a lot of people. He's helped so many companies grow as he grows. But anyways.
No, yeah, that's exactly true, brother. So I'm curious, what would you say to someone that feels stuck in a situation? Let's say they don't know what their purpose is. They say, "Hey, man, maybe they're a believer, maybe they're not, but they just feel stuck. They're working a dead end job, or they're going to school that their parents want them to go, and they just feel stuck." What would you say to that person? What would be their plan to action?
I'll answer it in two different ways. The first way, I think that we all kind of have a natural intuition to know what our purpose is. And here's two questions that you can ask yourself to kind of lead you in that direction. What do I love to do, and what am I good at doing? What do I love to do, and what am I good at doing? I love basketball. I am not good at basketball. My purpose is not to be a basketball player. I have to have the love for it and the gift for it. I love music. I'm okay at guitar. I'm not good at it. Probably not going to be a professional musician. So the key, I think, to finding your niche, where your purpose is to look at the intersection of where your passions are and where your giftings are. Because the place where your passion and your gifting come together, that's where you can really, really thrive. And this is just something that whoever's watching has to ask themselves. Okay, what do I love? Write them down. Just 3 things that I love. 3 things that fuel me, that give me passion. Maybe you love working with youth. You love the next generation. Maybe you love making people feel at home. Maybe you love taking a room that's cluttered and messy and turning it into something beautiful. You have all of your passions, things that you love to do. Write those down on one side. On the other side, write down, okay, what am I good at? What can I actually do well? And then find ways, this is where you have to get creative. Find ways to make those blend together. And that might require some trial and error. You might not hit it on the head the first time, but every failure is taking you closer to actually finding what that purpose is. As an example, I love ministry. My passion is ministry. I'm gifted in Bible knowledge. There's a million things I could do with that. I could open up a church consulting business that helps churches build their brand and just get some structure. I could do that. I could work as a pastor because my passions and giftings are aligned with that. I could work as all sorts of different things related to ministry. But I have to just make sure that my passions and my giftings are aligned with that. So that's the first way I would answer it. The second way I would answer it isn't really an answer. It's just an observation. Most of the people watching this are probably going to be American, and we're very individualistic. And what that means is we really have a high concern for what concerns us. So we always want to know about our purpose, and we get really fixated on our purpose, kind of like we get blinders to our purpose, and then we don't move because we're just constantly looking here, trying to figure it out, that we don't actually take action. We don't do something because we're just like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And we're just asking that question for the next 10 years, and we've never actually developed into anything. So I would say, look for your purpose. Look for that place where your gifting and your passions meet each other. But also, while you're doing that, don't get so stuck here that you forget to live life and to actually do things and take action. Because you can question all day, and it means real little. So just don't get stuck. There's a story that somebody told me once. They were drug addicts. They came from that kind of background, gangs, drugs, all of that. And they told me, I was in this hole, I was in this pit, and that pit was drugs and alcohol and sex and all of these things, and I was stuck there. And then I got out of there. God brought me out of there. And all I could do was stand next to the pit and just point at it and say, I used to be there, I used to be there, I used to be there, I used to be there. And I was there for a decade just pointing, I used to be there, I used to be there. And I wasn't in the pit anymore, but I was still captive to the pit. I was just standing next to it, pointing at it. So I feel like that can happen with purpose. We're looking for purpose. We're just always pointing at purpose, but we never actually go anywhere. We're just stuck next to that pit. So that's my caution to anyone looking for their purpose. It's a good and valiant journey. Pursue it, but don't get stuck in it. In the meantime, while you look for your purpose, while you look for your specific purpose, you can still do your general purpose. You can still love people. You can still be kind. You can still serve those who don't have, the poor, widows, orphans. You can find ways to fulfill your general purpose, to serve others, even if you haven't found your specific one.
Wow.
So
that's really powerful. That story, I've never heard that story before, but that is like mind-blowing because that's exactly true. Like I've even been there where like I'll overcome something, but I'm not moving from where I just overcame. Like I'm just literally looking back and like kind of gloating, hey, I used to be there.
It's like you got a divorce, but you're still living together.
Yeah, but you're not like going anywhere forward, and it's completely true. I want to talk to you about imposter syndrome, because I know that when we were prepping for this podcast, that's something we brought up, a topic that we want to talk about, because yes, you want to find your purpose, and like, okay, you've done all this now, you're not tunnel vision, you've overcome the adversity, you're fulfilled, but I feel like what's another caution of purpose is that imposter syndrome of thinking you're something that you're not, maybe, or like, what's your take on that?
Yeah. a couple of months ago, I was in Dallas for one of my doctoral classes. And I'm in that program because of one professor. There was this one professor that I met at the seminary who every time I talk to him, I just think, this man is amazing. This man, he has the answers to all my questions. He practices Christian spirituality in a way that I think is just beautiful, and I want to kind of glean from that. I want to learn from him. And I'm about to graduate, so I'm going to sign up for another degree. And that's why I'm in that program, is because that professor really inspired me. That was 2 years ago. Last month, I was in Dallas. He was my professor for the class that I was a part of. And he said something. He said, you know, guys, I can't believe I'm here. I don't feel like I belong. When I look at all of the other professors, I'm just like, what am I doing here? And this isn't quite how he said it, but that's what he was saying. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm an imposter, like I shouldn't be here. And I'm sitting there as a student thinking, are you kidding me? You're like my favorite professor of all time. You're like a genius. He's really well educated. And I'm like, what? And all that to say, I don't think, I could be wrong. I'm 28 now, 28 years old, so I reckon I could be wrong. But I don't think that imposter syndrome really goes away. I think it's something that, like, at least people who are highly motivated, people who are highly energized, people who are achievement seekers, I don't think that imposter syndrome ever goes away, because you're always leveling up, if you will. You're always moving up, and so you're always feeling like the small fish in the room, because your crowd is always changing. You know, nothing wrong with McDonald's, but if you work at McDonald's and that's your career and you're there for 40 years just working at one of the stores, not the corporate office, just at one of the stores, you're probably not going to have imposter syndrome. But if you move from McDonald's and then you go to the corporate office, oh man, I'm just a fry cook, I shouldn't be here. And then you move and you get into some like higher up role. Oh man, I'm just the secretary, I shouldn't be here. And then you move up and you end up being some like president or something, I don't know. But it seems like imposter syndrome for at least highly motivated people is always there, because we're always looking to like rise up. We're always looking to do more. We're always looking to surround ourselves with people that are greater because we want to be great or whatever. So yeah, that's not a great answer for imposter syndrome, but if you're a highly motivated individual and you have a high achievement standard, you're probably going to experience it. So be aware of it. When you do reach that place where you're like, oh yes, I've been wanting to get here, you're probably going to feel like you're not good enough, whatever that thing may be. And it's not just work related. You know, when we had our baby, I can't be a father. When I got married, I can't be a husband. Like, it seems like it happens at every phase of life. So just something to be aware of, and not let it dissuade you or dismotivate you.
Yeah. So do you think that's something that, I guess, you have to overcome? Or is there something that, hey, let me tell myself this, you know, like, is it, I wouldn't want to say like an affirmation. You got to shout in the mirror like, oh, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm better than that. But I see, like, for my own self, like, I've had that too, where like, I'll be in a meeting and I'll be like with people that are maybe business owners, and I'm like the freshly licensed insurance agent, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I shouldn't be here. Like, I don't know this product. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I kind of had that shift in my mindset of like, hey, I might not know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna give everything I got, and I'm gonna answer the questions to the best of my ability. Instead of thinking, oh my gosh, like using that imposter syndrome. Yeah. That's when it really clicked for me. Yeah. So I think, you know, yeah, that's something that could definitely resonate. And that's one way I overcame that with my own self. I don't know if there's a way you think people could possibly overcome that if they're dealing with that.
Yeah, no, I think that it's twofold. Yes, it's one, it's the mental, like, cognitive side of it. Like, I'm in this room because I earned my spot here. I know I feel like an imposter and I feel disqualified, but I wouldn't be allowed in the room if other people didn't see, okay, he has potential, let's bring him in. So I think there is that cognitive shift of saying, I'm not disqualified, I'm not an imposter, all of that. But I think there is also, to maybe what you were hinting at, I think there is some work that needs to be done. You know, just because you made it into the room doesn't mean you're done. You know, you can learn more. You know, I know that you sell insurance, but apparently you also provide like Roth IRAs and all of that kind of stuff, you know? So that's going to require continuing education because you don't want to mess someone's life up. So I think a cure to imposter syndrome, A, that mental shift, but B, develop some skills. Because the more skills you have, the less you're likely to feel like an imposter. And I think that developing skills coupled with that mentality shift, I think that'll be a really healthy place.
Yeah, for sure. That's one way to kind of, maybe a little off track, but that's where I feel like you build true confidence also. Because I used to be like an insecure guy, but it wasn't until I started making in my mind like, hey, I'm going to do this, and then get the skills, but taking action and then fulfilling on those promises to myself. That's when I became ultra confident. Yeah. Knowing like, hey, I told myself I'm waking up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to go for a run, and I did it. Hey, I told myself I'm doing 20 emails today. I did 22. Yep. Like doing little things like that, I think people could take a lot from when they're stay ultra confident to myself. To build confidence is to stay true to your own promises and fulfill on those promises that you set for yourself. Yeah. You get me?
Yeah, no, that's a great way to look at it. It's like a training exercise for sure.
So I want to kind of get some faith knowledge that you have. I'm curious. We're talking about purpose, but I know where we talk about purpose in a more of like a faith-based aspect. What would that look like to someone? Let's say someone, hey, I believe in God, and I believe in Jesus Christ as my Savior. But man, where's my calling? Like, hey, God, where's my calling at? What is that going to look to someone? Because I've heard people's stories, and they're like to the point where, like, oh yeah, God gave me. I walked outside and I saw an image, and I knew that was my calling. Some people have it like that. Yeah. And then for me, like, just creating this podcast, I was trying to come up with a name, and I was reading Proverbs, and I forgot exactly what Proverbs it was, but one of the chapters started and it said the purpose. I'm like, okay, that's the name. I'm building off that, and I became the Purpose Journey. So that was kind of like, okay, cool. Sometimes I feel like God puts little things in our lives that'll kind of get you on that path. Yeah. What would that look like to somebody? Like, when God gives you His calling for you? Yeah. Is that something you're going to notice right away, or like how do you feel like that would resonate with someone?
There's probably as many answers as there are people in the world, because God reaches each one of us uniquely. You opened up a Bible, you saw a proverb, and you were like, I got it. For other people, they go on a mission trip and they see a starving African child and they're like, I know what my purpose is. I'm meant to feed these children. Wow. It's different for everybody, so I hesitate to give an answer like this is how God's going to speak to you. I would just say learn to slow down in life and be aware of maybe where God is nudging you, what direction He's maybe gently pushing you. Because I think sometimes God speaks to us, but we have 15 meetings, 600 emails, 40 episodes to catch up on, a new album from Taylor Swift that just released, a date with the honey. We have all these things that we don't actually slow down. Okay, God, what have you been telling me this week? What have my eyes missed that you want to remind me of? So I would say that would be a good start, and to just be aware that sometimes God will speak to you when you see someone, sometimes God will speak to you when you read something or when you see something. So it's always different, but I will say this. I read a tweet, I think it was. And I don't know if a historic person said it or not, but the tweet said something along the lines of, it was a tweet quoting someone. I just can't remember if that someone was a historic person. And the tweet was like, okay, if you're a Christian and you're a business owner, how do you make a Christian business? If you're a Christian and you're a business owner, how do you make a Christian business? And then the tweet said, you don't do it by if you own a shoe company, you don't make it a Christian shoe company by putting little crosses on all of the shoes. You make it a Christian shoe company by making a really good shoe. Because God creates beautiful things, and He values a good work ethic. So if you want to be a really Christian, I don't even know if I like using that term, but if you want to be a really good Christian business, then operate in a way that reflects the character of God. Be honest. Give a valuable product. Don't try to rip people off by selling them a beat-up car that you know is going to fail them, but you're trying to get a quick buck. Find ways to do things in a godly way. Even if that means that you don't put a Bible verse on every shoe that you sell. Even if that just means you give somebody a great shoe. That's okay, because that's blessing somebody's life. And yeah, that's a very Christian-y thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that'll kind of segue beautifully to this next topic I wanted to talk to you about is someone, okay, now they've got their calling, they've got their purpose, they got the career they want, and they're all in on their faith. But now the work's pulling them in this direction, and the church and their beliefs are pulling them in this direction. How does someone balance that? Like I know I've dealt with that in the workplace of, okay, man, don't want to cuss anymore. Don't want to go drink. I don't want to go party. And then I'm in an environment where all the coworkers are wanting to go, out for drinks after work, and everyone's, gossiping, and everyone's talking badly about each other, and just a negative environment. How does someone balance that? Like when they're getting pulled in different directions, what would you say to that person? Like how does someone overcome that?
Yeah. So you asked two different questions there. One of them is, how do I balance work and my Christian ministry, and potentially people have families and brothers and sisters and friends? How do you balance all of those things was one question. The other question was, what do I do when I'm a Christian in a non-Christian world? So two different questions. I don't know if you want me to flesh one out.
Let's do both, because both of those questions are really good.
Okay, so how do you balance life? This is actually a really hard question because it's very deep. There's a lot to discuss. The first thing is that just needs to be said is, as Americans, as a whole, we do way too much. We just have too much. We weren't made to function the way we function. We weren't made to go to sleep as late as we do. We weren't made to wake up as early as we do and work as many hours as we do. Like all of these things, like we just do too much. I would love to see the average person's list of like things they have to do. Just tasks that they signed up for, and just include everything. And the thing is that we just have too many things. And I think as a country, maybe even as like a world, because I know that we're not the only highly driven country there is, but I think as a country we need to find a way to slow down and recognize how important rest is, recognize how important it is to just turn your phone off and not be on your emails. There's something powerful about it. If anybody's interested, there's a book by John Mark Comer. It's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it's a phenomenal book. And he's just talking about like how we've gotten here where we're always just in a hurry because we have to come from this meeting to that meeting to this meeting. And then we have to go pick up the kids and this and that and that. And we're trying to balance all these things. And we're like this trying to juggle a million things. And he's just posing the question, what would it look like if you just dropped some of those things? And instead of having 50 things to juggle, what if you only had to juggle 5? 2? What are the most important things to you? And how can you devote yourself fully to that? So this answer, it might be different than a whole bunch of the people you'll interview. So I'll just give that disclaimer. How do you balance the 5 million things that we all have going on? Do less things. You can't balance them. That's the point. You might be able to for a little bit. Eventually, your body will give out. Your mind will give out. I think your soul will give out. And, if you've ever juiced an orange, by the time you're done with it, it's just pulp. There's just a peel there. That can happen to us. Our energy is the orange juice. And just the more we're squeezed, the less of us remains. So
that's pretty cool.
I'll restate that. How do you balance the 5 million things we all have going on? You do less. Because you weren't made to handle that many things. We're finite. We're not God. The other one, how do you live in a world as a Christian, in a world that is not a Christian, with a lot of frustration sometimes, with a lot of potentially bullying and a lot of just feeling awkward, and that's part of the Christian life. You were at camp. We talked about Christianity being an invitation to suffer. And part of that suffering is we're a little weird. We have to say no to things that other people wouldn't say no to. And I wouldn't make it a big deal I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm a Christian, I don't drink, I can't do any of that. Like, I wouldn't do that. But also, if you're a Christian, and this question is just for Christians, if you're a Christian, how do you deal with that? You deal with it knowing that the world hated Jesus, and he said, because they hated me, they will hate you too. You know?
Wow.
I don't think Jesus meant that we were just going to be hated. There's context to consider and the time and all of that, but there has to be something within Christians that is okay with saying, you know, the world does that, but I don't. You know? The Bible talks about us being light in the darkness. We are light in the darkness. Where everywhere else is dark, we are a shining beacon of hope. And the beautiful thing about light is that darkness cannot overtake it. You know, there can't be a shadow inside of a light bulb. There can't be a shadow inside of a fire because it's light. So that's less of a what do you do and more of just consider. Just consider that maybe it's okay to feel awkward and to feel a little bit alienated because that's part of the Christian call.
Yeah, I get you. No, for me, it's been a matter of just staying true to myself in my own faith, you know, and really knowing that there's more relationship out there. Like there's true love that God's going to give me. There's true love that he's going to give me through these other relationships that, going back to being aware, I wasn't aware of. You know, I was looking for this outside love, this outside lust, this outside partying, this outside stuff. That what really wasn't serving me, that always ended up failing me in one way or another, and I never saw it, you know? And I feel like a lot of people could possibly resonate with that and resonate with what you're saying too.
And I'll just give a little bit more clarity, just so I don't get misquoted or something. I'm not saying that the church is here and the world is here and somehow we're separate and we're not supposed to like come together. No, the world is here and the church is inside of the world. So we are a part of the world. We are going to have these interactions. And honestly, Christianity gives us a lot of freedom to do a whole lot of stuff. I mean, I think there's probably less circumstances and more where we have to actively push ourselves out of the situation. You know? We can have some liberty there and like, we don't have to be these just weird, I mean, we are weird people, but we don't have to be these like just super strange people that people are just like, what is happening with Leo? Like, we can live pretty normal lives. Like you do. You live a pretty normal life and you love God. And I consider myself the same way. Like, I live a pretty normal life and I just so happen to be a pastor. You know, like, it's all of who I am, but it's the best of who I am. You know, and that translates into everything that I do. When I talk to people, I'm looking for a car. When I talk to car dealers, you know, I'm just kind, I'm patient, I'm not yelling at them, I'm just hearing them out. Like, you take your Christianity with you. You know, and you impact your world that way. So even if you never go to a strip club with your coworkers, that's okay. They're still probably going to be your friends. You know, you draw good boundaries and it's not really going to be a big issue.
Of course.
I say that also knowing that our political climate is ridiculous and people hate Christians and it is an issue, but it doesn't have to be.
And I feel like a lot of people can resonate from that, because I feel like from the other view too, there is a lot of Christians that I've seen that will scoundrel or like scoff at these other people, they're worldly people or people in their own workplace. And I think that's where kind of that bad rap comes from sometimes. Is people that are like, they'll like be very extra about it. And yes, you want to be extra. Yes, you want to stand up for what you believe in. But it's about being a normal person at the end of the day too, and loving God, like you said. You know?
I think part of the issue, and why this question is even so difficult to answer, because I'm really struggling with it, I think part of the issue is that, the church has done a terrible job of addressing sin. You know, they will stand out in some corner and outside of an abortion clinic and yell at people that they're going to burn in hell for all eternity as their skin falls off of their bones, and they're like showing pictures of dead baby, and they're just being cruel is what they're being to people who are in a really difficult season. They're being cruel. And I think that's why when you say I'm a Christian, you kind of feel this like, is that okay? Because when people hear the word Christian, they start to think, oh, it's those people that stand outside the clinics and go like that. Oh, it's those people that like bully people who are LGBTQI plus affirming, and Christianity doesn't have a good, I hate this word, Christianity doesn't have a good brand. And so that makes it difficult for people maybe who are a little bit less crazy like us. We're passionate, we love Jesus, but we're not like cruel to people in their sin. You know, we have boundaries, and we have an understanding that like we're broken too.
Exactly.
You know, I might not be sinning in some hot button political issue, but I'm sinning when I disrespect my wife. I'm sinning all the time. You know, I sin every day, but it's not a hot political issue, so nobody really gives it that big of a deal. But yeah, I agree with you there that the church really hasn't made it more difficult for us to be in the world, because they've given such a bad name to Christianity. And what was supposed to be marked by love and compassion is kind of marked by bickering and arguing. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, I see that. I think it goes back to your beginning statement of purpose of loving, caring, putting others first. I think if we get back to that, even if you're not even a believer, I think if you put those values forward, man, life just open, like blossoms for you. You see the goodness in people. Things that, you know, used to piss you off, going to a car dealership and waiting 5 hours to get seen doesn't bother you anymore. You're patient, you're relaxed. Yeah, for sure. You know, and
and here's sorry, go ahead.
And I guess just because you're understanding, you know, of the circumstances of, like you said, I think you started off was, what did that person go through today? You know, that's ripping me, or that I'm at work and I'm getting a phone call and they're super upset at me, and do I fight back? Or am I? Okay, let me consider what this person's going through. You know, what's going on here? How can I help them? How can I serve them? How can I make their day better? That's just a thought I had. If we were just more understanding in life, believer, non-believer, whatever you are, if you're just more understanding for other people, your life then becomes way easier. You know, once you put other people first. It's weird and it's funny to say. It's backwards of American thinking. But once you put people first, you get rewarded in the end.
And like, I'm an advocate for truth. I believe in truth. I believe that what God says is the solution to the human problem, and that He is our route to human flourishing. You know, I believe that. But that same professor that I talked about earlier, he said something last month also. He said, the gospel is offensive enough. Don't make it more offensive by the way you treat people. The gospel is offensive enough. You're a sinner in need of salvation. Don't make it more offensive by criticizing people and by mocking them and by making them feel less than. You know, I believe in truth, but I also believe in delivering truth with love, not just in a harsh manner. So, that same kindness that you're talking about. Yeah,
it's really powerful. I'm curious, since we're on this topic of faith and the church and the world, Christianity, what would your view? Because I know I felt like this at one point. Someone that's, man, they've been living away from God. They have never really believed, and they've never really trusted in God. What would you say to that person that they want to go to church, but they're a little scared, and they may feel some fear, they might feel like an outsider? You know, like how does someone overcome that? You know, because I know you were someone, I didn't even know that either, that's someone that didn't believe for a season in your life. How does someone overcome that? Is it a matter of being around the right people, or is it a matter of your beliefs, or really having to, you know, is that between you and God? Like, how does that work for someone?
Another hard question.
I give hard questions out here, baby. That's what we do.
So I think that if you're there and you're wondering, I want to go to church, but I'm scared because Christians have a reputation. I just want to say that the news focuses on the stories that make headlines, but that's not all Christians. In fact, most of the Christians that I've come into contact with are actually pretty normal people. Like the number of Christians that are actually outside of abortion clinics and like screaming at people and showing pictures of babies and stuff like those are actually very few. Most people are much more centered. So I would just throw that out there is just consider that. The reason that you're seeing the most extreme form of Christianity is because that's what sells newspapers. But really, most churches are not like that. That's not to say any church is perfect, because no church is perfect. But we're also not as crazy as you might initially think. So I would say just spend a little bit and just visit a couple of churches and just see where you could potentially find yourself feeling at home. And give them grace. If you show up to the church and they say something and you're like, oh, that did not sit well, I'm leaving. That's okay, you can leave. Don't discount the whole process though. Go to the church next door. And I'm fairly confident that you will be able to find at least one community of faith that is healthy and is loving and kind. Yeah.
That's awesome. So it's a matter of opening yourself up, really, and, listening and trying it out. Not coming in with that, maybe some baggage you might have. Like, there's a lot of people that have bad experiences with people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I think that happens in life in general. Like, you'll meet...
Yeah, I think the baggage is unavoidable.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say.
Like, you meet someone, it could be anything. I could go to this Whataburger down the street and they give me terrible service one time. Now I'm always gonna, attest that Whataburger with
I'm never going there again.
Yeah.
Yep.
When it could have been just someone made one mistake, and
it's true. And I will say, for the church has made more than one mistake. It's continually failed to do what is right, and that needs to be acknowledged. Like, as a church person, I apologize because the church really has failed in a lot of ways, and we've become so political in ways that maybe we shouldn't be. And this isn't me talking about my church, by the way. I'm just observation of the American evangelical church. We've become focused on the wrong things to the point where we've become fairly unattractive to people. And that's concerning. So if you're looking for a church, come check out Living Word Evangelical Free Church, Far Texas, Jackson, and I forgot what the other street is, but it's on Jackson.
Pull up.
Yeah, pull up. But yeah, I'm sorry that you have a bad church experience, and hopefully you can find somewhere that makes that right, because yeah, we are the vessels of Jesus. We help people come to Jesus, and that's a beautiful thing. And I don't want anyone to be scared of that because we come out in the news as these crazy people that are spitting in people's faces.
Yeah, of course. So I think this could help people too, whether it's someone that has to give a lecture for class, someone that has to give a presentation for their company, or someone that has to go give a sermon in front of a brand new church, like I know you did with our church.
Yeah.
So how does, is it trial and error? Like how can someone get better at public speaking? That's something that just came to mind that I think could help a lot of people out there.
So I think we all have natural talents, things that we are just naturally gifted at. I think public speaking is one of mine. That's not to say you can't be a good public speaker if you don't have it, but I think it helps me that I've already kind of got that personality to me. With that said, my very first preaching class at Dallas Theological Seminary, I went up, we had 15 minutes. I did my 15-minute message. I walked off the stage. What you do after you preach is that the whole class and then the professor tells you everything you did wrong and some of the things you did right. So I got down from that, and they were like, okay, guys, what did you think? And people were like, well, Victor, you didn't do good at this. You didn't do good at this. You didn't do good at this. And then they told me, you did good at this. You did good at that. The professor goes up. He butchers me.
Really?
This is what he said. And this is almost a word-for-word quote. There was nothing good about that sermon.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep.
Yeah, he ripped you.
Yep, that's what he said. He gave me a lot of negative comment. This is how the conversation came up. He was giving me his feedback. He gave me negative comment, and then another negative comment, and I was like, okay, here comes the good one. And then another negative comment, and he kept giving me negative comments. And I was like, hey, professor, what did I do well? And he told me, there was nothing good about that sermon.
Oh my.
Yep.
Wow.
So, all that to say, you can always develop in anything. You might not achieve Michael Jordan levels of basketball, but you can get pretty good at shooting a couple baskets. You can really develop just with a lot of practice. But also there are things in everyone's lives that we're naturally gifted at, whether that's drawing or whether that's singing or whether that's public speaking or whether that's some form of martial arts or gymnastics. We all have things that we're naturally good at, and those require much less hard work than something that we're super not talented in. I have no talent for painting. It is easier for me to develop my public speaking than it is to develop my painting because I'm naturally inclined to public speaking. So,
Wow, that's crazy. Well, you definitely come up. So
no, thank you. I will give you my professor's email and you can let him know that.
I'm gonna send him a very wordy
Just
email
kidding.
and be like, "Hey, man."
I don't even know what his email is.
No,
and he probably wouldn't remember me. I was very unspectacular, as you can imagine.
It's okay, man. I think you do a great job.
Thank
but
you.
that's really funny. But that can attest to, hey, man, you can have some bumps in the road, and you could be doing something you love to do, and someone's gonna rip you and say you're terrible at it. But you can't let that get to your heart. You can't let that bring you down. You got to keep going, man.
Yeah. And
you just got to keep going.
I will say this. People have different opinions about what good is. So I don't think my sermon was that bad. But he was a fairly old man, and he had one view of preaching, and my view of preaching was totally different. And so it didn't line up. So there might be people listening who are doing something in a certain way, and they're not getting any love for it, but they're actually maybe just discovering a new way to do it that is equally good or better. So just because one person disapproves doesn't mean you should scratch the project.
Yeah.
Maybe keep pursuing it, get some other opinions.
Yeah. I guess kind of like the last question as I wrap up, I'm curious, what is like success like within faith? You know, like let's say I have my faith and I have my career. How do you know you're fully successful? Like, is there like an end point to that? You know, like, does it go back to the purpose statement that we made? Or how do I feel like, hey, I'm successful now. I'm fulfilling my purpose. I'm successful. But like, I don't know, you know, I'm not sure if I'm asking that correctly, but you know, what is true success? You know, like what is, coming from a faith standpoint, like, is it helping these other people, or how do you know that, like, all right, now I'm successful? You know, what does that look like? What does that feel like to you? Is there
How is one successful in their spiritual life, or how is one successful
I guess like
in business?
in their spiritual life.
In their spiritual life.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I think primarily you are successful in your spiritual life when you have a relationship with the Lord. Because here's backtracking a little bit. If you say the word spirituality in a room and there's 10 people, you'll get 10 different answers on what spirituality is. Some people will say, oh, spirituality is like when you connect with nature and there's this beauty. Spirituality is what happens when you're practicing yoga and you feel free. Spirituality is what happens when you whatever. You'll get 10 million definitions. Christian spirituality is different because Christian spirituality is a spirituality in the Spirit, Holy Spirit spirituality. So our spirituality is different. So our spirituality success, I don't know if I can measure it, but if we could, I think it would be measured by the fact that there is an existing relationship with the Lord of the universe. That is a success. And not just that there is a relationship, but that there is a relationship that's rooted in love. If you read John 15, a relationship which leads you to abide in him. The word abide comes from an old word in English, abode, a house where you make your home. So when the Lord says abide in me, he's saying make your home in me, find rest in me, find your comfort in me, dwell with me. So I think that is a part of it, not just having the relationship, but having such a love relationship with the Lord that the place you run to for rest and comfort and peace isn't a place at all. It's actually him. You run to him. Right now, I've just had a long day. I've started work and I've had multiple meetings and it's been a long day. I'm tired right now and I can't wait to go, not to say that I'm not loving this, but I can't wait to go home and just be at home, take off your shoes and just lay down on your couch. There's a rest there. And I think that spiritual success looks like that, but when you're doing that with the Lord. when you're resting in him, when you're so satisfied with your relationship with him that you just get to go and breathe and abide in him. So having that relationship, having it be fruitful and vibrant, not just, yeah, I'm a Christian, but I don't really experience the presence of God. No, that you are on fire for Jesus, and also that because of that relationship, that you love others. Anything that only soaks in will get really fat and explode and die, right? You got to take and you got to give. You got to take and you got to give. You got to take and you got to give. And I think that would be, if you ask me, I think that would be a really healthy spirituality, a spirituality that is rooted in their relationship with Jesus, fueled by the intimacy and the abiding that is happening, that ultimately leads to the believer going out to the ends of the world, proclaiming the love of God and the message of salvation and serving people. I think that would be a really, successful Christianity.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, Victor, I think this is the end of the road here, brother.
Let's do it, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. First podcast ever, so that was fun.
This was great, man. I'm very excited for everybody that everybody's watching or that's listening in. I pray that they got some good value out of this and maybe heard some good stories and maybe, inspired them in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's their faith, whether it's their business, whether it's their own personal journey. I really hope that this is going to resonate with people, and I believe it will. Yeah. But so some people, they may not know you. Obviously, you said you're now an associate pastor at Living Word. Where could someone maybe if they want to connect with you or reach out, or they want to learn more about the gospel and they want to maybe meet with you? I know now you're doing meetings with people or phone calls. How could they reach you?
I am Evolved Victor on pretty much every platform. Evolved, like evolution. EVOLVED Victor at gmail.com, Twitter at Evolved Victor, Instagram Evolved Victor, YouTube Evolved Victor, Evolved Victor at
Gmail. On brand.
So my Calendly Evolved Victor. So everything is Evolved Victor. So if you really wanted to reach out, you can do that. Awesome. Or just message Leo and he'll give you my phone number.
That is true too. Well, Victor, this was a great podcast. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining the Purpose Journey podcast. Hope you have a blessed day. Stay tuned for next week for another episode. Smash that subscribe button.
That's right. Smash
it. And I hope to see you guys sometime, maybe at church. Me and Victor will catch you on a Sunday. That'd be pretty awesome.
Swing through. We'll break your ankles.
All right, guys. Hope you have a blessed day.